My aunt told the family I brainwashed Grandpa out of his $2.2 million fortune until his nurse testified I was the only one who visited in 5 years. The accusations started the day after the will reading. My phone exploded with texts from cousins I hadn't heard from since high school. Uncle Pete called me a manipulative snake. Aunt Diane posted on Facebook about elder abuse and tagged half the family. My mom, caught between her brother and her daughter, kept saying we needed to talk this out like adults. But here's what they didn't know. For 5 years, I visited Grandpa every single Tuesday and Thursday at the nursing home. I'd bring his favorite butter cookies from the Polish bakery across town. We'd watch Jeopardy and he'd yell answers at the screen, getting maybe 30% right but feeling like a genius. When his roommate died, I sat with him through the night because he was terrified of being alone. When he got pneumonia, I was the one holding his hand at 3 a.m. while he struggled to breathe. The rest of the family? They had excuses. Always excuses. Aunt Diane lived 20 minutes away but was too busy with her book club and yoga classes. Uncle Pete claimed work kept him tied up, though his Facebook showed plenty of golf outings. My cousins were pursuing their dreams in other cities, as if Grandpa's loneliness should wait for their convenience. They sent cards on his birthday, called on Christmas maybe. That was their version of family devotion. Grandpa wasn't senile. His mind was sharp until the very end. He knew exactly who showed up and who didn't. He'd mention it sometimes, quietly, like he didn't want to burden me with his hurt. Your aunt says she'll visit next week, he'd say. Next week never came. After the first year, he stopped believing their promises. After the second, he stopped mentioning them at all. When he got sick last fall, I moved into the nursing home's family suite for 2 weeks. I bathed him when he was too weak to do it himself. I changed his sheets when he had accidents. I read him the newspaper every morning because his eyes had gotten too bad. The nurses knew me by name. They brought me coffee and thanked me for being there. The day before he died, Grandpa asked his lawyer to visit. He changed his will, leaving me everything except $50,000 split among the rest of the family. They can have enough for a nice vacation, he said, since they always seem too busy for anything else. The lawyer witnessed it. 2 nurses witnessed it. Grandpa was completely lucid, cracking jokes about finally getting the last word. At the will reading, you could hear a pin drop when the lawyer read the amount. Then came the explosion. Aunt Diane screamed that I'd poisoned Grandpa's mind. Uncle Pete threatened to sue. My cousins created a group chat called Justice for Grandpa and started planning their legal strategy. They hired a lawyer who specialized in contesting wills. They claimed undue influence, diminished capacity, coercion. The hearing was set for next month. My family stopped speaking to me entirely. My mom tried to play mediator, but eventually chose her brother's side. Family is family, she said, as if I'd forgotten that during those 5 years of Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yesterday, I got a call from Grandpa's primary nurse, the one who'd been with him for the entire 5 years. She'd received a subpoena to testify. I'm going to tell them the truth, she said, about who was there and who wasn't. About the Valentine's Day your aunt promised to visit and didn't show. About the birthday your uncle forgot completely. About all of it. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. There's something else you should know. Something I found in your grandfather's medical files from his last month. Something that changes everything about this case. I couldn't fit what happens next in this short video. Watch the rest down below. What did you find? I managed to ask, my hands shaking so badly I had to sit down. Nurse Patricia, I'd known her name for years, had brought her homemade cookies every Christmas, took a deep breath on the other end of the line. Your grandfather kept a journal. The social worker had been encouraging him to write down his thoughts as a way to process his feelings about aging and mortality. But it became something else entirely. What do you mean? He documented everything. Every visit, every phone call, every broken promise. He wrote down the dates, the times, what was said. He kept track of every birthday card that came late or not at all. Every Christmas call that lasted less than 5 minutes. And he wrote about you. About how you were the only one who showed up. My throat tightened. Why didn't anyone tell me about this? Because we only found it last week when we were clearing out his belongings from storage. Your aunt actually requested his personal effects be sent to her. She wanted to go through them before you could, claimed she was looking for family heirlooms. Patricia's voice dropped lower. But the journal was still in our medical records room. He'd asked us to keep it there, said it was important documentation. He told me specifically about 2 months before he passed, that if anyone ever questioned his decisions, this journal would tell the truth. I felt my heart pounding. Can I see it? I've already sent copies to your lawyer and to the judge handling the case, but I wanted you to know what's in it before the hearing. Some of it is going to be hard to read. That was an understatement. The journal arrived at my apartment 2 days later in a manila envelope marked confidential. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold as I read. Grandpa's handwriting was shaky but legible, deteriorating slightly over the months, but always clear enough to understand. The first entry was from 5 years ago, right after he'd moved into the nursing home. June 3rd, first day in this place. Diane promised she'd visit tomorrow to help me settle in. Pete said he'd come by this weekend with the grandkids. We'll see. June 4th, Diane didn't come. Said something came up. June 8th, Pete didn't show. Called to say the kids had soccer. June 10th, my granddaughter came today, brought me cookies from that Polish bakery I love, the one on Milwaukee Avenue. I didn't even know she remembered. We watched Jeopardy. She didn't seem to mind that I got most of the answers wrong. She just laughed and said I was giving Alex Trebek a run for his money. It was the first time I've laughed since moving here. I had to stop reading. My vision was blurring. The entries continued, month after month. Grandpa documented every visit I made, every detail. The time I brought him a heated blanket because he said his room was always cold. The afternoon I spent rearranging his furniture because he couldn't see the TV properly from his bed. The day I sat with him for 6 hours during a snowstorm because his roommate's family couldn't make it and he didn't want the man to be alone. And he documented every absence from everyone else. July 15th, my birthday, I'm 81 today. Diane called at 11 p.m., said she forgot, and hoped I had a good day. Pete sent a card that arrived 3 days late. My granddaughter took the day off work and brought a small cake. We ate it together and she told me stories about her job. She made me feel like I mattered. October 3rd. Diane was supposed to visit today. She's rescheduled 4 times now. I don't think she's coming. October 4th. She didn't come. November 28th. Thanksgiving. The nursing home had a family dinner. Diane and Pete both said they were too busy with their own celebrations. My granddaughter came and brought homemade stuffing because she knows it's my favorite. She stayed for 4 hours. I'm grateful, but it also makes me sad. She shouldn't have to spend her holiday with an old man in a nursing home. She should be with people her own age, but she chose to be here. That means something. The entries went on and on. Each one was like a knife to the chest. Not because of what he wrote about me. That filled me with a bittersweet warmth, but because of what he wrote about everyone else. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Diane promised last week she'd come today. She said she felt bad about missing so many visits and wanted to make it up to me. She didn't show, didn't even call. March 19th, Pete's birthday. I called to wish him happy birthday. He seemed surprised to hear from me. The call lasted 2 minutes. April 7th. My granddaughter brought me books from the library today. She knows I can't see well enough to read anymore, so she's been reading to me. Today we started a mystery novel. She does different voices for all the characters. It makes me laugh. There were pages and pages documenting the same pattern. My aunt's broken promises, my uncle's increasing distance, my cousin's complete absence, and my consistent presence, week after week, year after year. Then came the entries from his last few months. These were different, more reflective. September 12th. I've been thinking about my will. I know what people will say when I'm gone. They'll say my granddaughter manipulated me, that she took advantage of an old man, but that's not what happened. She's the only one who's been here. The only one who's treated me like I still matter. The others, they've already written me off. I'm just waiting to die in their minds. But not to her. To her, I'm still grandpa. Still someone worth visiting. September 30th. I talked to my lawyer today. I'm changing my will. Diane and Pete will be angry. They've always expected an inheritance. But why should they get rewarded for neglect? Why should they profit from my death when they couldn't be bothered to be there during my life? October 15th, I got pneumonia. Spent 3 nights in the hospital. My granddaughter slept in a chair next to my bed the entire time. She took time off work. She held my hand when I was scared. The nurses all know her by name. They treat her with respect because they see how much she cares. Meanwhile, my own children called once to check in. Once. October 23rd. I'm back at the nursing home. Weaker now. I can feel myself failing, but I'm at peace with my decision. My granddaughter deserves everything. She's earned it. Not through manipulation, but through love. Real love. The kind that shows up. The final entry was dated 2 days before he died. November 8th. I asked my lawyer to come today. Made it official. Changed the will. My granddaughter gets everything except $50,000 to split among the others. Let them have their vacation money since they always seem too busy for anything else. The lawyer asked if I was sure. I've never been more sure of anything. This isn't about money. It's about recognizing the truth. She was here. They weren't. That's all that matters. If they contest this, I want them to know. I was completely clear-headed when I made this decision. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I'd do it again. I closed the journal and sat in silence for a long time. This wasn't just documentation. This was evidence. Irrefutable evidence that Grandpa had been mentally sound, that his decision had been thought out over months, that there had been no manipulation or coercion. Just facts, just the truth. I called my lawyer immediately. Did you get the journal? I asked. I did, and so did opposing counsel. I suspect they're panicking right about now. What happens next? Well, they can still proceed with the hearing, but this journal destroys their entire case. They claimed your grandfather was coerced or mentally incompetent. This proves he was neither. He documented his own reasoning over a 5-year period. No judge is going to overturn a will with this kind of evidence. So we won? We won. But I'd recommend still going to the hearing. Let the judge read the entries aloud. Let your family hear them in public. They need to face what they've done. The hearing was scheduled for November 15th. I arrived early, dressed in the black suit I'd worn to Grandpa's funeral. My lawyer met me outside the courthouse. They're going to try to settle, she said. Probably offer you more of the inheritance if you'll just drop the case and avoid the public hearing. No deal, I said. Grandpa wanted the truth to come out. That's what's going to happen. Inside the courtroom, my family sat on the opposite side. Aunt Diane wore an expensive black dress and dark sunglasses, playing the grieving daughter. Uncle Pete looked uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. My cousins, there were 5 of them, looked annoyed, like they had better places to be. My mom sat separate from everyone, her face pale. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Please be seated, Judge Reynolds said. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I've reviewed the materials submitted by both parties. This is a case to contest the will of Mr. Anthony Kowalski, deceased, on the grounds of undue influence and diminished mental capacity. My aunt's lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, stood up. Your Honor, my clients believe that Ms. Kowalski manipulated her grandfather during a vulnerable time in his life. I've read your brief, counselor, the judge interrupted. I've also read the deceased's journal, which was submitted as evidence. Before we proceed, I want to address that directly. She put on her reading glasses and picked up the journal. The court has reviewed 163 dated entries spanning 5 years. Mr. Kowalski documented every visit he received, every phone call, every interaction with family members. He also documented his thought process regarding his will change extensively. She looked at my aunt's lawyer. Your clients claim Mr. Kowalski lacked mental capacity, yet his journal entries are clear, detailed, and demonstrate consistent reasoning over an extended period. He documented dates, times, and events with remarkable accuracy. My aunt's lawyer shuffled his papers. Your Honor, we believe the defendant may have influenced the contents of that journal. Are you suggesting she forged 163 entries in her grandfather's handwriting? The judge's voice was ice. Or that she somehow coerced him to write specific things over a 5-year period without any of the staff at the nursing home noticing? No, Your Honor, but I also have testimony from the nursing home staff. She picked up another document. 3 nurses, 2 social workers, and the facility director all confirmed that Ms. Kowalski visited regularly, that she was the primary family contact, and that Mr. Kowalski was mentally competent until his final day. They also confirmed that the other family members rarely visited. The judge looked directly at my aunt. Mrs. Thompson, according to the visitor logs and staff statements, you visited your father 4 times in 5 years. Is that correct? My aunt's face flushed. I was dealing with my own health issues. That's not what I asked. Did you visit 4 times in 5 years? The logs might not show every visit. They're electronic logs. They track every person who signs in. The judge's voice was sharp. 4 visits. The last one was 8 months before your father died. Meanwhile, your niece visited 520 times over the same period. That's an average of twice a week for 5 years straight. The courtroom was silent. I could feel my aunt's fury radiating from across the room. The judge continued. Mr. Fletcher, you visited 3 times in 5 years. The last visit was on your father's 85th birthday, where you stayed for approximately 20 minutes before leaving for a golf tournament. My uncle's face went pale. I don't recall. It's in your father's journal. He wrote, Pete came for my birthday, left after 20 minutes, said he had a tea time he couldn't miss. At least he came, I suppose. That's something. The judge read the entry with devastating precision. My uncle looked like he wanted to disappear. As for the grandchildren, she gestured to my cousins, the records show a combined total of 6 visits from all 5 of you over 5 years. 3 of those were for Christmas. 1 was for your grandfather's 84th birthday. The other 2 were when you needed him to co-sign loans. My cousin Trevor, oldest son of Uncle Pete, stood up angrily. This is ridiculous. We had our own lives, our own families. Sit down, the judge said coldly. Your grandfather also had a life. He was a widower living in a nursing home and he needed his family. You all made choices about where to invest your time and energy. He simply made a choice about where to invest his money. She closed the journal. I'm going to read a few more entries because I think this family needs to hear them. Mr. Kowalski wrote these in his final month. The judge began reading, and with each entry, I watched my family members sink lower in their seats. October 28th. I haven't heard from Trevor in 6 months. I called him today. He said he'd call back. He didn't. October 30th. Diane promised she'd come visit this week. She's promised that 23 times now over the past 5 years. I've stopped believing her. November 1st. I told Pete I was scared about dying. He said everyone feels that way and changed the subject. My granddaughter, when I told her the same thing, held my hand and talked with me about it for 2 hours. We talked about my wife, about my life, about what I hoped came next. She listened. Really listened. That's all I wanted. My aunt was crying now, mascara running down her face. But I felt no sympathy. These were tears of embarrassment, not remorse. The judge set down the journal. I want to be very clear. Mr. Kowalski's will is not being overturned. He was of sound mind, his wishes were clear, and he documented his reasoning extensively. This case is dismissed. My aunt's lawyer started to speak. Your Honor, if we could just— This case is dismissed, the judge repeated firmly. And I'm awarding costs to the defendant. Your clients will pay Ms. Kowalski's legal fees for having to defend against this baseless challenge. She looked at my family one final time. Mr. Kowalski left you each approximately $8,300 from the $50,000 he set aside. That's more than you deserved, based on your actions. He could have left you nothing. He chose to leave you something, and you chose to challenge his will, putting his granddaughter through months of stress during her grief. You should be ashamed. The gavel came down. It was over. I walked out of the courthouse with my lawyer, barely processing what had happened. We'd won. Completely. The will stood. The inheritance was mine. And my family had been publicly called out for their neglect. I need a drink, my lawyer said. That was brutal. That was necessary, I replied. As we stood on the courthouse steps, I saw my mother approaching. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The rest of the family had already left. Probably couldn't get out of there fast enough. Can we talk? She asked quietly. I don't think there's anything to say. Please, just 5 minutes. I nodded to my lawyer, who walked a discreet distance away. I'm sorry, my mom said, and she actually looked like she meant it. I should have supported you from the beginning. I knew you were there for your grandpa. I knew Diane and Pete weren't. But I thought if I stayed neutral, I could keep the family together. How'd that work out? She flinched. Not well. Your aunt isn't speaking to me now. Says I should have supported her more aggressively. Your uncle called me a coward. And they're both furious about the legal fees they have to pay. That's not my problem. I know. She looked at her hands. I made a choice. I chose wrong. I chose them over you, even though you were the one who did everything right. I'm so sorry. I wanted to stay angry. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, to cut her out like I'd cut out the rest of the family. But she was my mom. And unlike the others, she at least seemed to understand what she'd done wrong. I need time, I finally said. I can't just forgive and forget. You hurt me. You took their side when you knew the truth. I understand. I just want you to know that I'm proud of you, for standing up to them, for standing up for yourself, and for being there for your grandpa all those years. That took strength. It didn't feel like strength. It just felt like the right thing to do. That's what makes it strength, she said softly. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Your grandpa gave it to me about a year before he died. He made me promise to give it to you after he passed, but only if there was conflict in the family. He said you'd need it. I took the envelope. It had my name on it in Grandpa's handwriting. I'll give you space, my mom said. But when you're ready to talk, I'll be here. That's a promise I intend to keep. She walked away, leaving me standing there with the envelope. I didn't open it until I got home. Inside was a letter, dated almost exactly a year before Grandpa died. My dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and my family is acting exactly as I expected them to. I'm sorry you have to deal with their anger and greed. I wish I could be there to defend you, but in a way, I suppose this letter is doing that. I want you to know something important. When I changed my will, it wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision made in anger. It was a carefully considered choice based on years of observation. You showed up, you cared. You treated me like I still mattered, even when I was old and sick and scared. Your Aunt Diane is my daughter and I love her, but she's also someone who only shows up when it's convenient or beneficial. That's who she's always been. Even when she was young, she'd only call when she needed money or a favor. I accepted it then, but I don't have to reward it now. Your Uncle Pete is my son, and I love him too. But he spent his whole life prioritizing everything else over family. His work, his hobbies, his friends. Family was always last on his list. I used to think he'd change as he got older, realize what mattered. He never did. And your cousins, well, they're products of their parents. They learned that family is something you take from, not something you give to. But you're different. You didn't visit because you expected something in return. You visited because you love me. Real love, not the obligatory kind. And I want you to know how much that meant. The money I'm leaving you isn't a reward. You didn't earn it through your visits. You earned it through your character. And I trust you to use it wisely, to build a good life, to maybe help others the way you helped me. Don't let them make you feel guilty. Don't let them convince you that you're greedy or manipulative. You're neither. You're kind and loyal and decent. Those qualities are rare. Treasure them. I'm proud of you. I'm proud to have known you. And I'm at peace knowing that my money will go to someone who actually deserves it. Love always, Grandpa. I read the letter 3 times, crying through all of them. Then I carefully folded it and placed it in the box where I kept all the cards and letters Grandpa had given me over the years. The next week, I received a call from my aunt's lawyer. They wanted to discuss an arrangement. My clients are prepared to drop any further challenges to the will, he said smoothly. In exchange, they'd like you to consider a voluntary redistribution of the inheritance. They feel that a 50-50 split would be fair and would honor your grandfather's memory of family unity. I laughed. Actually laughed. You're kidding, right? My clients are trying to reach a reasonable compromise. Here's my compromise. They can have the $50,000 Grandpa already gave them, minus the legal fees they owe me. That's what the judge ordered. That's what they're getting. Tell them if they contact me again, I'll file a harassment complaint. I hung up. They tried twice more. Once through my uncle directly, who called and left a rambling voicemail about family forgiveness and Christian values. Once through my cousin Trevor, who sent a long email explaining how they'd all been misunderstood and how Grandpa would have wanted us to be united in his memory. I blocked their numbers, deleted the emails. They weren't going to guilt me into giving up what Grandpa had wanted me to have. The inheritance cleared 3 weeks later. $15 million minus legal fees and taxes. Still a staggering amount. I didn't blow it on anything extravagant. I didn't take a vacation or buy a sports car or do any of the things people probably expected. Instead, I paid off my student loan, put a down payment on a small house, set up a trust fund for my future kids' education, and donated $100,000 to the nursing home where Grandpa had lived, specifically for their activities program. We'd like to name the recreation room after him, the director said when I made the donation. If that's okay with you, he'd like that. He loved the recreation room. That's where we watched Jeopardy. They put up a plaque, the Anthony Kowalski Recreation Room, in memory of a beloved resident. I attended the dedication ceremony. The nursing home staff was there. Several residents who'd known Grandpa came. Nurse Patricia gave a speech about what a kind man he'd been, how he'd always had a joke ready, how he'd been unfailingly polite even on his worst days. My family was not invited. 6 months after the will was settled, I ran into my cousin Natalie at a grocery store. She was my age, had been someone I'd been close to as a kid. We'd drifted apart in high school, then completely lost touch. She saw me and immediately looked uncomfortable. I thought she'd turn and walk away, but instead she approached. "Hey," she said awkwardly. "Hey." We stood there in the produce section, both of us holding baskets, not sure what to say. "I'm sorry," she finally said, "about everything. The lawsuit, the things my parents said, all of it. It was wrong." I was surprised. "You're the first person from the family to actually apologize." "I know, and I should have done it sooner. I should have done it at the hearing, but I was scared. My parents were so angry and I didn't want to go against them." "So what changed?" She set down her basket. "I had a baby, 3 months ago, a little girl. And when I was in the hospital holding her, I started thinking about what kind of person I want her to grow up to be. And I realized I don't want her to be like my parents. I don't want her to think family is something you ignore until there's money involved." "Congratulations on the baby," I said, and meant it. "Thanks." I named her Ruth after Grandma. I wish I'd known Grandpa better before he died. I wish I'd visited more. But I was caught up in my own life, and by the time I thought about it, it felt too awkward, like too much time had passed. He would have loved to meet her. I know, and that's my fault. My mom keeps saying you stole our inheritance, but you didn't. We just never earned it. You did. You showed up. We didn't. We exchanged phone numbers. She wanted to stay in touch, wanted her daughter to know at least one decent person from the family. I wasn't sure if I'd actually call her, but I appreciated the gesture. A year after Grandpa's death, I visited his grave. It was a cold Tuesday in November, almost the anniversary of his passing. I brought flowers and a package of butter cookies from the Polish bakery. "Hey, Grandpa," I said, sitting down on the grass next to his headstone. "I wanted to update you on everything." I told him about the house I'd bought, about the nursing home donation, about the lawsuit and how the judge had read his journal entries aloud. I told him how his words had shut down every argument my aunt and uncle had tried to make. You'd be happy to know Aunt Diane and Uncle Pete aren't speaking to each other anymore, I said. Apparently they got in a huge fight about the legal fees. Each one thought the other should pay more. Their lawyer ended up having to split it between them, and neither one is happy about it. I told him about running into Natalie, about her baby. She seems different now, more aware of what matters. Maybe having a kid does that to people. I told him about my mom, how we'd started talking again, slowly, carefully. We weren't back to where we'd been before, but we were working on it. I'm using the money wisely, I promised. Just like you asked, not wasting it, not flaunting it, just building a good life, a stable life, the kind of life you would have wanted for me. I sat there for a while longer, just feeling close to him. The wind rustled the leaves on the nearby trees. A few other people were visiting graves across the cemetery, but it was mostly quiet. I miss you, I finally said. I miss our Tuesday and Thursday visits. I miss watching Jeopardy with you. I miss bringing you cookies and hearing you complain about the nursing home food. I miss all of it. I placed the butter cookies by his headstone, knowing they'd probably get eaten by squirrels or birds. But it felt right. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for leaving me something more valuable than money. You left me the validation that what I did mattered, that showing up matters, that love is measured in time, not words. I stood up, brushed the grass off my jeans. I'll be back next Tuesday, and the Tuesday after that, just like always. As I walked back to my car, I felt a sense of peace. The lawsuit was over. The inheritance was settled. My family had shown their true colors, and I'd stood my ground. Grandpa's final wishes had been honored. 2 years later, I met someone. His name was David, and he worked as a physical therapist. We met at a coffee shop when we both reached for the last blueberry muffin. He insisted I take it. I insisted he take it. We ended up splitting it and talking for 3 hours. On our third date, I told him about Grandpa, about the inheritance, about the lawsuit. I wanted him to know the whole story before things got serious. My family thinks I'm a greedy manipulator who conned an old man out of his money, I said. If that's going to be a problem, is that what happened? He asked. No, I visited him twice a week for 5 years. I was there for him when no one else was. He left me his money because I actually cared about him. Then that's all I need to know. Your family's wrong. And honestly, the fact that you showed up for your grandpa like that says everything I need to know about your character. We got married a year later. Small ceremony, just close friends and a few relatives. My mom came. Natalie came with her now toddler daughter. My aunt, uncle, and other cousins were not invited. Aunt Diane sent a card anyway. It said, "Congratulations on your wedding. We hope you'll reconsider your stance on the inheritance. Families should stick together." I threw the card away without responding. On our honeymoon, David and I visited Poland, the country where Grandpa's parents had immigrated from. We went to the small village where his family had originated, saw the church where his parents had been married before coming to America. We brought back photos and a small folk art piece to hang in our home. I wish he could have seen this, I said. He talked about Poland sometimes, about wanting to visit his family's homeland. He'd be happy you're doing it for him, David said. When we returned home, I was pregnant. We found out a week after getting back. It's a boy, the doctor said at the ultrasound. David looked at me. Do you know what you want to name him? I did. Anthony, after my grandpa. Our son was born the following spring, Anthony David. He had dark hair and bright eyes and the most perfect tiny hands. I took him to visit Grandpa's grave when he was 3 weeks old. Hey, Grandpa, I said, holding the baby close. I want you to meet someone. This is Anthony, your great-grandson. I named him after you because you were one of the best men I ever knew. I hope he grows up to be like you, kind, sharp, and able to tell the truth even when it's hard. The baby made a small sound, like he was agreeing. I'm going to tell him about you, about our Tuesday and Thursday visits, about butter cookies and Jeopardy, about how you taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up. He's going to know his great-grandpa, even if they never got to meet. As I stood there with my son, I realized that Grandpa's legacy wasn't just the money. It was the lesson he'd taught me about what matters, about being present, about choosing people who choose you, about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. The money had changed my life in practical ways. Paid for a house, provided security, helped me build a stable foundation. But the real inheritance was the knowledge that I'd done right by someone I loved, that I'd shown up when it mattered, that I hadn't let him die alone and forgotten. 3 years after Grandpa's death, Uncle Pete had a stroke. It was serious. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks, then transferred to a rehab facility. My mom called to tell me. He's asking for you, she said. Why? I don't know. He just keeps saying your name. I didn't go right away. I needed time to think about it. Part of me wanted to refuse, to let him experience what Grandpa had experienced, watching the clock, hoping someone would show up, dealing with the disappointment when they didn't. But I wasn't him. I wasn't someone who could ignore family members when they were sick, even if they'd done it to others, even if they'd called me terrible names and tried to take away what Grandpa had left me. I went to visit on a Tuesday afternoon, full circle, I suppose. Uncle Pete looked smaller in the hospital bed, older. His face drooped slightly on one side from the stroke. He could talk, but his words were slurred. You came, he said when he saw me. I came. He was quiet for a moment, struggling to form words. I'm sorry. For what specifically? For all of it. The lawsuit. The things I said. For not being there for Dad. He took a shaky breath. I didn't realize until I ended up here how lonely it must have been for him. How much it must have hurt. I sat down in the chair next to his bed. The same kind of chair I'd sat in next to Grandpa's bed all those years. He wrote about you in his journal, I said. About how he'd call you and you'd say you'd call back but never would. About the birthday visit where you stayed 20 minutes before leaving for golf. He loved you. He just wished you'd loved him enough to show up. Uncle Pete's eyes filled with tears. I thought I had more time. I thought I'd visit more later when work slowed down, when the kids were older, when things were less busy. But things never got less busy. And then he was gone. Why did you support the lawsuit? If you felt so guilty, why try to take away what he left me? He looked ashamed. Diane convinced me. She said you'd manipulated him, that we were being cheated. And I think part of me wanted to believe that because it was easier than admitting the truth, that I'd failed my father. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Are you going to stay? He finally asked. Or are you just here to tell me I'm getting what I deserve? I'm going to stay for a little while. Not because you deserve it, but because this is who I am, someone who shows up. I visited Uncle Pete 3 more times during his recovery, not out of obligation or forgiveness, but because I refused to become what he and Aunt Diane had been. I refused to let their behavior change who I was, but I didn't forget. And I didn't pretend everything was fine. When he was released from rehab and asked if we could put everything behind us, I was honest with him. I'm glad you're recovering, but no, we can't just put it behind us. You tried to take away what Grandpa wanted me to have. You called me a manipulative snake. You made my grief harder by dragging me through a lawsuit. Those aren't things I can just forget. I said I was sorry, and I'm saying sorry isn't enough. You're sorry now because you had a health scare, and it made you realize some things. But where was that realization when Grandpa was alive and lonely? Where was it when you were posting on social media about family values while never visiting your father? He didn't have an answer for that. If you want to rebuild some kind of relationship with me, I said, it's going to take time and effort, real effort, not just words, but I'm not holding my breath. I left his house that day and felt no guilt. I'd done more than he deserved. The rest was up to him. Aunt Diane never apologized. She doubled down instead. She started a blog about elder abuse and grandchildren who manipulate for money. She didn't use my name directly, but anyone who knew the situation would know who she was talking about. I ignored it for 6 months. Then Natalie called me. My mom's gotten out of control, she said. The blog is getting attention. She's doing podcast interviews. She's positioned herself as some kind of advocate for elderly people, using Grandpa's story but twisting it to make you look like the villain. It's wrong. What do you think I should do about it? I think you should tell your side, publicly. The truth needs to get out there. I thought about it for a week. Part of me wanted to stay private, to keep our family drama within the family. But another part of me realized that Aunt Diane was profiting from lies. She was using Grandpa's memory to build a platform and make money from sponsored content on her blog. That, I couldn't ignore. I wrote a detailed post on Medium titled, The Truth About Elder Abuse and Inheritance, A Granddaughter's Perspective. I didn't name my aunt directly, but I shared the timeline, the visitor logs, excerpts from Grandpa's journal, with his lawyer's permission, the judge's ruling, all of it. The post went viral. Within a week, it had over 2 million views and thousands of comments. People shared their own stories of being the only family member who showed up, of dealing with relatives who ignored aging parents until there was money on the line. A journalist reached out and asked to interview me. The article ran in a major newspaper with the headline, Inheritance Battle Reveals Uncomfortable Truth About Elder Care in America. Aunt Diane's blog suddenly looked very different in context. People started leaving comments on her posts, calling her out for the hypocrisy. Her sponsorships dried up. She shut down the blog 2 months later. She sent me one email after that. All it said was, I hope you're happy now. I didn't respond. But yes, I was happy. Not because I'd hurt her, but because the truth was out there. Grandpa's story was told correctly. His choice was validated publicly, not just in a courtroom. 5 years after Grandpa's death, my son Anthony started asking questions about his namesake. Tell me about great-grandpa, he'd say at bedtime. And I would. I'd tell him about butter cookies and Jeopardy. About a man who loved crossword puzzles and bad jokes. About someone who knew the difference between family who showed up and family who made excuses. Did everyone love him? Anthony asked one night. Not enough people showed him they did, I said honestly. Some people said they loved him but didn't act like it. Love is an action, not just a feeling. You have to show people you care. Like how you visit him at the cemetery? Exactly like that. Anthony thought about this. When I'm big, can I visit him with you? Of course. We'll bring cookies. Even though he can't eat them? Even though he can't eat them. It's about remembering him, honoring him, showing that he mattered. He mattered to you. He mattered to me very much. My son learned the lesson Grandpa had taught me, that showing up matters, that consistency matters, that real love is measured in presence, not promises. 10 years after the will reading, I got a call from my mom. She was crying. Diane had a heart attack, she said. She's in ICU. It doesn't look good. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, anger, pity, sadness. Aunt Diane had spent the last decade being bitter and hateful, and now she was dying. Part of me thought she was getting what she deserved. Part of me just felt sad for the waste of it all. Are you going to visit her? My mom asked. I don't know. She's asking for you and Pete. She wants to apologize. She's had 10 years to apologize. I know. But maybe she needs to do it now, for her own peace. I thought about it for 2 days. Then I drove to the hospital. Aunt Diane looked terrible, gray-skinned, hooked up to machines, struggling to breathe. My mom was there, along with my cousins. The room felt heavy with years of family dysfunction. I'll give you privacy, my mom said, ushering the cousins out. I sat in the chair next to the bed. That damn chair again. You came, Aunt Diane rasped. I did. I'm dying. I know. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, tears were running down her face. I'm sorry for all of it. I was cruel to you. I was cruel to my father. I wasted so much time on stupid things. Book club, yoga, image, and I missed what mattered. Why did you do it? Why fight so hard for money from a man you couldn't be bothered to visit? Because I was ashamed. Because I knew I'd failed him. And admitting you'd been a better granddaughter than I'd been a daughter was too painful. So I made you the villain instead. I convinced myself you'd manipulated him because the alternative was accepting that I'd abandoned him. He loved you. He wrote about that in his journal too. He wished you'd come. He kept hoping year after year. I know. I read the court transcripts. I read everything. She coughed. A wet, rattling sound. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know it's too late for that. I just wanted you to know that you were right. About all of it. And I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. I sat there looking at her. This woman who'd made my life hell for years. Who'd tried to take away what Grandpa wanted me to have. Who'd spread lies about me publicly. And all I felt was tired. I accept your apology, I said. Not because you earned it, but because I'm letting go of the anger. It's been weighing me down for too long. Thank you, she whispered. I stayed with her for an hour. We didn't talk much. There wasn't really anything else to say. When I got up to leave, she grabbed my hand weakly. Take care of Natalie's kids, she said. They deserve better than the example I set. I will. She died 2 days later. I attended the funeral, sent flowers, but I didn't speak. I'd said everything I needed to say. At the reception afterward, Uncle Pete pulled me aside. He'd recovered well from his stroke, though he walked with a slight limp now. Diane left you something, he said. Asked me to give it to you. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a note that said, I should have split my portion of Dad's inheritance with you. You earned it. This doesn't make up for what I did, but it's what I can give. Diane. I looked at the check for a long time. Then I donated it to an elder care advocacy organization in Grandpa's name. Now, 15 years after Grandpa's death, I have 3 children. Anthony is 12. His sister Julia is 8. His brother Thomas is 5. We visit Grandpa's grave as a family every few months. The kids bring drawings and flowers. They've heard all the stories. They know about the butter cookies and Jeopardy. They know about Tuesday and Thursday visits. They know about the lawsuit and the journal and why their great-grandpa left me his money. Great-grandpa sounds cool, Julia said once. He was. He was very cool. I wish I could have met him. Me too, sweetheart, me too. The inheritance money is mostly in trust funds for the kids now. College funds, investment accounts, a safety net for their futures. The house is paid off. We live comfortably, but not extravagantly. David and I both work. Me as a social worker now, specializing in elder care advocacy. Him still in physical therapy. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty about the inheritance. If I ever doubted whether I deserved it. I don't. Not anymore. Because I understand now what Grandpa was really leaving me. Yes, it was money. But more than that, it was validation. It was proof that showing up matters. That love is a verb. That real family is built through actions, not DNA. The rest of my family learned that lesson too late. Or maybe they never really learned it at all. But I did. And I'm teaching it to my children. When Anthony turned 13 last month, he asked if he could start volunteering at the local nursing home. Why do you want to do that? I asked. Because great-grandpa was lonely, and I bet there are other people there who are lonely too. Maybe I could visit them, like you visited him. I cried. Right there in the kitchen, I just started crying. That's a wonderful idea, I managed to say. So now, every Tuesday after school, I drive Anthony to the nursing home. He visits with a man named Walter who has no family left. They play cards and watch game shows and talk about baseball. Walter's face lights up when he sees Anthony coming. You're a good kid, I told my son last week. I'm just showing up, he said, like you taught me. And that's Grandpa's real legacy. Not the $2.2 million, not the lawsuit or the drama or any of that. It's the lesson that showing up matters, that people need to be seen and valued. That family is something you build through presence and care. My aunt and uncle learned that lesson too late. They thought family was something you could take for granted, something that would always be there waiting when you finally decided to show up. They were wrong. And Grandpa made sure they knew it. His will wasn't about punishing them. It was about honoring the truth, about saying out loud what everyone knew but no one wanted to admit. I was there. They weren't. That mattered. It still matters. Every Tuesday when I drop Anthony off at the nursing home, I think about Grandpa. About those 5 years of visits. About butter cookies and Jeopardy and holding his hand at 3 a.m. when he was scared. I wouldn't trade those moments for anything. Not for all the money in the world. Because those moments were real. They were love in its truest form. And no one can take that away from me. Not my aunt with her blog. Not my uncle with his excuses. Not my cousins with their lawsuit. They can contest the will all they want. The judge already settled that. But they can't contest the truth. I was there. I showed up. I loved him when he needed it most. And he loved me back by making sure I'd be okay after he was gone. That's family. Real family. Everything else is just noise.